Hi, and welcome to Nature Connections. Thanks to everyone who's watching this video. In the Nature Connections interview series, I talk to people from all paths of life, but who have one thing in common, which is that they help us to connect with nature and bring nature into our homes and into our lives. And in today's episode, I'll be speaking with Brooke Mellen. Hi, Brooke, and thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
You're in a beautiful natural location, which is ideal.
Yeah.
For this.
Yeah.
So,
Which is a big change because I used to be in New York City a few months ago. So
yeah, lucky you. You're one of those
yeah.
people who made that transition from the city to
Yes.
the outdoors.
Yeah.
So as a quick intro, and then Brooke will tell us more about, well, you'll tell us more about your life and what you do and your story. But as a quick intro, so Brooke is the founder of Cultured Forest, which is a unique concept, really. It's from what I understand, you advise individuals and corporations on how to have an enriching and healing experience through sort of nature discoveries, forest bathing, but also art appreciation and nature art, and all this sort of in our daily lives. And I discovered Cultured Forests. Well, we met kind of through Instagram, really, which is always great to connect this way. And I was just looking for tree photography inspiration, and I came across your photos in Central Park, and I drew these, and I don't know, it was just a nice interaction, and it was great to discover your work. So I'm super excited to be speaking with you and to discover more about your story, a cultured forest, of course, but also more about forest bathing, what it is, because I don't really actually fully know or have never really done it myself. So I'd love to hear more about that, and also the relationship to art. But anyways, let's leave it at that to start. Yeah, could you tell us a bit about your story and what brought you to create Cultured Forests and what it is?
Yeah, it was definitely it was a very not planned experience. It just kind of like life brought me to it. So maybe nature brought me to it. I'm just looking over at my dog. I'm making sure sometimes he gets a little guarded with my time, and so he
We
seems
can
fine.
share. We can
Yeah,
share you.
yes. But so yeah, I've worked in fine art and insurance for probably, I don't know, almost 20 years. And I studied art business at NYU in New York. That's why I moved to New York originally.
Where are you from?
I grew up in Kansas, so
Mm.
I'm a Western, if you can imagine farmland, that's where I grew up. So, um, but I grew up there and ended up in New York City and kind of always thought I'm not going to stay here for very long, but it's the center of the art world, and that's what my degree was in. So I worked at an art gallery, and then ended up doing insurance, and then I worked at Sotheby's auction house, and then I did insurance claims, and I just these were kind of high stress jobs, even though it sounds, the word we use is sexy in New York City.
Mm.
I had a lot of stress, and I'd always try to find ways to deal with that. I would swim, and I didn't really have nature. I would go on hikes when I could, but it was really hard in the city. Um, and but I was hiking with a friend, and I mentioned, wouldn't it be interesting one day to lead meditation in nature? And he was like, yeah, that'd be cool. And I didn't think much of it, but now I actually coach people to be forest therapy guides now, and I always say go into nature and say what you want, because for whatever reason it worked for me,
Mm.
because then I started kind of dealing with some stress in my personal life on top of the daily grind of dealing with insurance claims, and people are upset when they have an insurance claim, and I'm a very calm person, and
Yeah.
but they I'm working for the insurance company, so they don't necessarily trust me. And
Mm.
even though we try, we're fair and things like that. But so I went into a store on the Lower East Side called the Alchemist's Kitchen, just browsing one day, and there was this book, Forest Bathing: How Trees Fit Your Health and Happiness by Dr. Keeley. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And I read it. It's a very simple book with lots of pretty pictures of trees. And I was also doing a lot of artistic work. I'll be honest, I was doing some art therapy.
Yeah.
And in that, drawing a lot of trees all the time, a lot of nature pictures of me hiking, of animals, of. So I came to the realization that that's what soothes me. That's what helps me deal with stress. And so I, for some reason, designed a website. I can't even tell you why. I think there was a part of me that was like, do this, please, and so I just designed this website and ended up needing to leave my job. And so I was like, okay, I'll try this. I'll
Mm.
try the concept of forest bathing. I went to Japan. I met with this doctor.
Oh,
I,
fantastic.
I got training through his organization. And and then I just kind of followed whatever opportunities would come my way. So in doing that, I met a lot of people in other countries who were doing what I'm doing. So
Mm.
they were all like, you should come visit. I don't know if they really meant it, but I did. I ended up going to Finland and Australia and Netherlands. And I just was really fortunate that I could do these things. I had worked really hard and
Mm.
saved some money. And um, so call it privilege, I really did work very hard to be able
I
to
mean,
take some time. There were just some things that I felt I needed to heal,
mm-mm.
and hadn't taken the time to do that. And
Mhm.
so, and I had a father who was very connected to nature.
Okay.
He passed away when I was young, but I just always kind of wanted to do the things that he wasn't able to do.
Mhm.
Like, so I went before when I was working, I'd go to like the Galapagos, I'd go to the Amazon, Iceland, and I went alone and just
Mm.
solo trip. and and I was like, my dad didn't get to do these things, so I'll do it for him, and
Yeah.
but it just really brought me peace. And I thought, I don't know, maybe there's some way I can help other people have these experiences. I really didn't know what it
Mm.
would be. I only planned to take maybe 6 months. And then 6 months in, I got a message from the Wall Street Journal saying they'd like to interview me. And, and I was like, because I was being very private about what I was doing.
Mhm.
Although I guess I was putting it on social media quite a bit, but I was almost kind of embarrassed. I was embarrassed that I had to take this time off,
Mm.
and I thought it just seemed weird to people, what is
Yeah.
this? And to admit that I needed to do some forest therapy to help myself. And
Mm. Because it's
since
so
that,
linked to your personal story.
yeah, but then I was like, uh-oh, this is some pretty major coverage, and so I was
Yeah.
like, I need to keep trying this. And so I kept kind of doing it, and different opportunities would come my way
Mm.
with people. It's not some huge money making thing. One person on Instagram accused me of trying to make money off of nature. And I just was like, that's not really my
No.
mission. So anyway, but I wanted to make enough money that I could do the things I love in life, which,
Yeah.
you know, I don't see anything wrong with that.
Mm.
Um, but but anyway, that's another, how how to make your business so that you're giving back to nature, things like that. But Um, so yeah, and then, I kept doing it, and then the pandemic hit, and I was like, well, now I can't meet with people in nature. Well, and
So
poor
this,
me.
when you started it, it was about 2 years ago, right?
I think so. Yeah, yeah. Maybe almost. I guess it was 2 years ago. I'm losing track of time because of
Mm.
COVID. I'm like, wait a minute, it's been a whole year. Insert, But,
Yeah, yeah.
so I just was like, you know what? I'll just come up with some virtual experience, and
Mm.
it's not a high tech experience, but I started doing virtual nature therapy with the intent
Mhm.
to help people find connection with others and to hopefully inspire them to either bring nature into their internal environment
Mhm.
or realize that it's time to start reconnecting with nature. You can't necessarily be with people, um, you
Yeah,
know. And for New Yorkers, they were isolated in their apartments. So I was like, how do I help them,
yeah.
find peace?
Mhm.
Um, so anyway, that I started doing that, and then kind of started offering that to some corporations, things like that.
Mhm.
Um, I'm starting to get into the sun here, so I might move.
Lucky you, it's pouring with rain here.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like, I'll be grateful for it. Uh, but try and just get out of the direct sun. Okay, there we go.
Okay, but so from your basically from a very very sort of personal experience, and the feeling of like needing to heal, that's kind of
Yeah.
where all this stemmed from, and
Mm-hmm.
and how did you sort of decide, or because you started off with forest bathing, as you said, like going to Japan and exploring that, and how did you evolve your offer or sort of define what you were going to do with cultured forest, because there's several different dimensions to it.
Yeah, I think I didn't quite know. I knew that I didn't want to do just a forest bathing company because
Mm.
you know, I I just was like, well, that's seasonal, and I don't know if there's a lot of interest in it. And this is the same thing I do with people who I coach is like, what are the things you love, and what's at the core of that? And then how do you create a life where you get to do those things you love? And how do
Mhm.
you create a business where the concept is centered on the things you love to do? And um and so that's, and I was like, well, I have this art background, so
Yeah.
I think at the core of it will just be helping people find I want it to be very simple, just help people find some calm in
Mm.
nature. um, and then I started thinking about mindfulness and um, just creating these sort of, how do you create an environment where people feel calm? So um, and I always tell people, well, I wasn't claiming I'm a brain surgeon, but I was I was claiming things that I could do and sharing
Mhm.
that with the world. And I was like, what I would love to do. So I kind of sat down and thought, what would I love to do?
Great
And
start.
then and just start doing it. And and I'm not claiming I'm some specialist in something that you need tons of training in. I mean, I'm just a so it was more like a lifestyle,
Yeah.
I think. And but again, I never was like, I want to make a ton of money. So
Mm.
that was my motivation, was more, how do I bring the type of people I want into my life? How do I start telling the world that these are the things I love to do, and if you want me to do that for you professionally, I'll do it.
Mhm.
So it was sort of, I hear a lot of criticism of the word manifesting, but let's say goal setting, or just expressing and saying and making real the things that you like to
Mhm.
do.
Yeah, and so for you, it was both art and like nature, And so
Yes.
how did you connect the art piece to this? Is it specifically nature art or just sort of an appreciation for?
And I don't think I knew really. I didn't know that well, something in me I think knew that I love
Deep
just
inside.
pretty pictures. And so, I didn't really know what that would look like. I didn't have a plan, I'll be honest. I sort of took
Yeah.
on a whole new approach to life, which was sitting back and just putting out there what I'm interested in and working hard and communicating that. You really have to communicate your message in whatever way
Mm-hmm.
and let people know that. And also communicating that in natural spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And um, so I can't remember the original. Oh, and so I thought, oh, well, and the art side of it, I haven't been able to do that as much. It's sort of like taken on its own
Mm.
life. And now what people are really interested in is working with me to build up their businesses. So I'm like, all right, I'll go for that. And
Yeah,
but
adapting to what the
yeah,
needs are.
yes, but so the art component kind of became my own
Mm.
art because I used to work in galleries where I promoted other artists, and I never felt that my art was really up to par with some of these artists. I even had an artist at a gallery I worked at kind of make fun of me for all my nature pictures because he was following me, I think, on Facebook, and he was like,
Mm.
so he sort of made fun of all my pictures of roses, and because he takes more like
Mm.
dramatic photos.
Yeah.
So um
Well, everyone their own style.
yeah, anyway, but I remember kind of like being like wah wah, and I just thought, oh
Yeah.
yeah, he's right. There's not enough to this.
Yeah.
And so I say to people, when people, give you negative feedback, don't
Mm.
always don't always take it to heart.
Yeah.
Try to let it burn inside you
Mm.
until it pushes you to be like, I'll show you,
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Love that energy, that transformation of like
Yeah.
nagging to like, let me show you.
Yes. Yeah. Um, so
Well, it sounds like it's been quite a journey.
yeah,
And yeah, you've
yeah,
evolved a lot. You've found like different paths. You've, yeah, adapted to whatever came your way and overcame a lot of challenges. Uh,
thank you. Yes, that's very true.
mm,
And I did work. I mean, I worked mostly really hard to build a following and
mm,
find people who are interested in what I'm interested. So that I did work pretty hard at that.
mm.
People are like, someone said to me, I said, once I started connecting with nature, things started to open up for me. And I was saying that, I can't remember to who, and they were like, yeah, but you also did a lot of work to make these things happen. So
Yeah, there's always this work that has to be done anyways behind any concept at
yeah.
the start. But maybe can you tell us a bit about more about, so we've talked about nature and how, we all need to sort of reconnect more with nature and how can we bring nature more into our lives. What do you think it is about nature that heals or that makes us feel good? What's this magical power?
Well, that's what I loved about the Japanese concept of forest bathing for me
Yeah, tell us
personally,
more about that. Yeah.
because a lot, you know, as I post, there's a lot of haters in the world or whatever, and you know, maybe you post about, hey, go on this nature walk with a guide, and they're like, you don't need a guide, and you don't need science to know that nature
What a
benefits.
shame.
Yeah, and it's like, to each their own. And yeah, that's true. Many of us know that we just feel better when we go on a nice drive up a mountain, and not everybody has access to that
Mm,
either. Um, but I love that the Japanese were actually studying it
Mhm.
because in the 80s they were facing a crisis of people high suicide and burnout rates. And so they created this concept of Shinrin-yoku or forest bathing,
Okay.
in part because they're like the third most densely forested country in the world behind, I think, Russia and Finland. So, um, and they created this concept, and then eventually it developed into doing research behind it. And the research isn't perfect, but it basically says spending time in nature lowers cortisol, and cortisol is what your body produces when you're stressed.
Mm.
And when I read that and I read what cortisol does to you, and somebody who as personally has had some stress, not just job related, but
Mm.
other things, I was like, if I keep living this life,
Mm.
I'll die young. And so I
It was like
just
an
was,
alarm bell almost.
yeah. And I was, like, so I so there is actually a lot of science behind what
Mm.
spending time in nature does. It boosts your killer T cell activity. It lowers cortisol, lowers your heart rate, improves mood. Um,
The
and
dream.
so, yeah, and so there is science behind it, but something
Mm.
in me, knew that going on a hike helps me feel better. And
Mm.
it just does. And so, um, and I started, and I read King Lee's book, and he said, in the workplace, you should think about having pictures of forests, and you should think about having
Mm.
diffusers that diffuse nature scents in the workplace. And I was like, that's great, and
Mm.
you should have natural wood in the design of the workplace and in your personal life. And then they're saying that there are chemicals in those, they call them
Mm.
phytoncides, in those essential oils that have been shown to improve immunity. And
Mm.
so anyway, I just loved all these concepts and um,
Mm.
that I intuitively knew. And so then I started exploring what is it in me, which is something I try to get the people I train to do, is do some self discovery of, okay, you've heard about this forest bathing concept in Japan. What is it in you that loves it so much? Um, and so then I started like looking at my ancestry and how I have Scandinavian ancestry, and I watched the Vikings and watched how
Amazing.
my ancestors were like basically nature worshippers.
Yeah.
So it was, so it's just an interesting
Mm.
path, self discovery, and and I don't have all the answers, but
Mm.
some people spending time in nature maybe isn't stressful or maybe isn't accessible to them, or they don't understand that concept, especially if you live in urban areas.
Yeah.
Um, but as somebody living in an urban area who grew up
Hmm.
around trees, I knew.
Yeah.
Um,
You need it.
yeah, yeah. So,
Mm.
um,
And so how do you lead? How do you lead those experiences in
yeah,
like forest bathing experiences? Like what does it look like if you can give us a taste of
yeah. Um, it, and if you go in Japan, it's very simple. You go to a forest bathing center and you can meet with a doctor or a nurse who actually will take your blood pressure. So they'll take your
oh,
vitals and
okay.
will have you do a mood test. So that's how it is in Japan. And then you might have a guide who will just take you and And it's just more like the comfort of having somebody familiar with that landscape. And so my experiences are kind of an amalgamation of things I've learned in life to
Mm-hmm.
help de-stress, and going on forest therapy walks with other guides, and just kind of, as soon as I heard about forest therapy, I decided to go on a hike that was strictly intuitive nature healing. And I write about it on my website. And I went to Harriman State Park, it's one of my favorite spots, and just walked very slowly and just paused and was like, what feels like it will help me? So it was one, tuning into
Mm-hmm.
myself and actually slowing down and being like, what do I need? Which most of us, especially people with fast paced New York City lives or children, or rarely will stop and be like, what do I need?
Yeah.
And so these things came to me, like, I thought, I feel like if I lean on this rock and just imagine the rock holding what I'm carrying, been around a million
Oh, I
years,
love that. Yeah.
it came here, it's a piece of a mountain that crumbled off. I thought, I'll just try it, and it wasn't, to me, people might be like, is that kind of woo woo? And I was like, in my mind, I was just like, this just feels like it will help me. And it did help. And so then I've had, so in doing this myself over time, I've developed some experiences. So basically, you take people on a 1 or 2 hour walk, and remind them that everyone is here to be present. So please avoid how's your job chit chat and what do you do for a living chit chat. That can come at the end. And
Yeah.
I say, either be quiet or just point out what you see around you, just to help everyone be present. And it's a way, and if people come who are friends, it's a way for them to communicate in a new way.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but and you basically just take them kind of on a curated nature experience, and also it's almost like art in a way. You've like curated an experience for them of, we're going to walk to this field, and once we're in this field, I'm gonna have you all sit down and lead you in some guided meditation, and then I'm gonna have you do breathing with a tree, where you breathe in and out, thinking of how you're producing air, carbon dioxide, which the tree needs,
Beautiful.
and it. So it's really simple stuff. Sometimes it's creative activities, and really you can, there's not really a set formula. Um, I do have a formula for people if they need it, but I also think, it's good to get creative. So,
Yeah.
so that's what it is. And then when I did the virtual experiences, I tried to kind of recreate that. I don't try and like make people feel like, I don't try and create some beautiful visual, you're in the forest immersive experience. It's more creating that sense of community and mindfulness through other
Yeah.
exercise. So
Okay. Yeah, it must have been challenging to do all this virtually.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
you cannot replace being in a forest, right? I mean, you can have wallpaper like mine, but
yeah,
I'm pretty sure if I breathe in, breathe out in front of
yeah,
it, yeah, it's not the same
yeah.
experience.
But it's helping, just kind of helping people, because meditation is interesting. If when you lay at bed at night, if you can play some, guided meditation of,
Mm-hmm.
imagine you're in a forest, even though you're not really there, your mind is actually pretty powerful, and
Yeah.
you can recreate the feeling of being there. Because I've been working with a
Mm.
friend with stage 4 cancer, and so she doesn't have the energy to go out into nature. So
Mm.
I have been working with her to help her remember how she felt at other times when she was in nature, um, which can bring the same sort of calming effect, believe it or
That's
not.
fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
After her,
really a powerful healing.
like after her chemo rounds, we would, um, she'd imagine she was in the redwoods or wherever. So
Yeah. Beautiful. Mm,
yeah.
that's great. And so do you have any advice for anyone sort of starting out or wanting to have this experience maybe on their own in
Yeah.
nature? Like how
Yeah.
do you
Well,
start?
on my website, I do have a few tips in the blog section of like how to forest bathe, even in an urban environment.
Mm,
It would just be, I always tell people go to your local park, go somewhere that you feel safe.
mm,
Ideally, that you have some space, enough people around that you're safe, but not too many people. And just slow down and imagine you're retired and you have nowhere to go and nowhere to be. Try to engage your senses, close your eyes, breathe. And there are, there are different exercises you could do,
mhm,
like that breathing with a tree. I try to do that even though even in the city, I would feel kind of dumb. I'd go to the Highline Park in New York City, which is an above ground railroad that was converted into a park. And I'd find a tree there and just put my hands on it and breathe in and out 10 times, thinking of that exchange of air. And I thought, I know people think I look dumb, but I don't
mhm,
care. So, but to me, it's about setting aside the value to setting aside some time for yourself, even if it's 5 minutes on your walking commute where
yeah.
you notice the green things around you,
Mhm,
or driving to your local park for an hour with your kids, and
mm,
um, when they're on the playground, just pausing and noticing the green, or what
mm,
whatever you can do.
mm,
Then you'll start. What happens is you start to notice how it makes you feel better and want it and crave it more, and then
mhm.
you, at least for me, and then you find ways to get more of that. Um,
Yeah. So really starting with sort of noticing
yeah,
as a starting
notice.
point, like try putting your awareness to nature, to trees, to anywhere
Mhm,
that because in the end, nature is really around us. I mean, even in urban areas, like you say, you can go to the High Line in New York, you can
mhm, mhm.
the smallest park in Paris and to all these
But there's,
parks. But
you know, these most cities have intentionally planted something green somewhere.
mm,
So I always was looking for that. But or if you have a
yeah,
backyard, lucky and you have a backyard, go out there. And yes, you can garden and mow your lawn, but like take some time to just sit out there and look at the trees and
yeah,
um, you know,
yeah.
whatever, whenever you can. So
Mm-mm-mm. Great
um,
starting points. And
well,
definitely accessible.
this makes me realize I want to create more guides for people, but I do,
Mm,
again, on my website, I do have some blogs about kind of how to do it. And
yeah.
I also have my training,
Mhm.
the coaching program. It's a
Mhm.
pretty self-directed, fast-paced, one-to-one program, but it's like
Mhm.
giving people some guidance on how to do this. And if you want to then integrate that into your professional life or
Yeah.
business or what have you, there are ways to do that too.
Mm.
So
That's great. Yeah, so a lot of resources on your website, and you also
yeah,
mentioned that book that inspired you. Do you mind giving us the name again?
it's Kingly, Qingli
Okay.
is his name. And another researcher in Japan, Yoshifumi Miyazaki, has also written a book about forest bathing. They're just the most simple books. Like you know, there, and forest bathing is a simple thing. To me, it's just mostly about creating the time to do it.
Mhm.
Like, it's not hard to do. Anyone can do it.
Yeah.
You have to make yourself a priority and do it. You know, even if it's
Yeah.
20 minutes of, and you know, if you really slow down, you know intuitively what you need to feel
Hmm.
better. If you're
Hmm.
like, I always feel better when I'm, then that's what, you know, or I feel better when I'm by a stream, or
Yeah.
the sound of water is really
Mm.
soothing.
Yeah. So it really has to come from you and from you noticing, appreciating, and sort of tuning into what feels good, like
Hmm.
regardless of like the science behind it. What really
Yeah,
matters is like
yeah.
places, the sounds, like what makes you feel good.
And in this, you know, and I think COVID, as horrible as it was, a lot of people have realized. I mean, what I've been seeing in my community is just this kind of return to nature, and
Mm. Yeah.
hope more and more people will do it and realize, because that was kind of the only thing many people could do safely, was go on a hike. And so
Hmm.
my hope is that as people realize that, then they want to
Hmm.
protect the planet and protect these things that are beautiful.
Yeah.
So um,
Absolutely. I'm very much aligned with you on this, and I think also you were saying like in the beginning that it's this feeling of feeling calm, like trying to find bring calm to our lives, like calming our
mhm,
minds, calming our rhythm. And I think
mhm,
add to that, there's also like what you said, this feeling of safety and feeling
mhm,
safe in nature. And I think the more these are, you know, emotions and feelings that come up when we're surrounded by nature, the more we'll want to protect it because it's protecting our own, yeah, safety, our own, you know, feeling of peacefulness. And
mhm.
so yeah, it's a one. I just wish I was, you know, close to you in New York City and could go on a go breathing with the trees with you.
I
And
know. Yeah.
mm,
And I actually started doing some remote forest bathing. So COVID ended up being a blessing in some ways, because you know, I would do events where people would go to their parks wherever they are, and lead forest bathing that way.
mm,
So
yeah,
there
really
are
adapt.
options. There are
Yeah,
options.
there are options for sure. And
Yeah.
so, you know, you obviously spend a lot of time with trees, and you've told us about a few of the places you like to go hiking and you like um, to experience and forest bathing. I'm curious. I always ask this at the end of these interviews. Like, do you have you know, a specific tree that sort of brings you joy, or that's particularly meaningful, or evokes even a memory, or just a
Uh,
type of tree, or
for some reason, I really love birch trees,
mm,
but in part just when I was in Finland, there's a lot of them, and maybe it's because like that's where my heritage is in,
mhm,
well, just northern Europe in general. But something about those trees, and they use the leaves there. They actually will go into the sauna and beat themselves with birch leaves,
mm,
and the aroma starts to come out, but it also just improves circulation. And I don't have many birch trees around, but it's funny because I said on the High Line, I go to trees and do the breathe with the tree. It's all,
mm,
they have a little birch
mhm.
garden there. So in general, I think birch
Yeah.
trees, um, for some reason,
Mm,
are some of my favorites. But also, you find that a lot of fungi, when they fall over, they tend to be a big home of like mushroom
mm.
things. Um, so I would have to say, if I were going to get a tattoo of any tree, it might be a birch tree.
Nice. That's a great way to put it. I should ask this question. If you were going to have a tattoo of any tree, what would it be?
Yes. Well, I've often thought, I was like, of all the trees in the world, if I ever got a tattoo, which
Yeah,
one?
that's a great
So
question. Yeah, but also I think birch trees are so unique also in their
mhm,
architecture and the bark. I was
mhm.
just actually I have a series of 4 birch trees, Himalayan birch trees, just up my street actually in London, and yesterday I saw this little girl like peeling off the bark because it's like so thin, it's really paper thin, and
Yeah.
it's really yeah, it's quite unique
Mhm.
as an experience to do
Yes.
birch tree. Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And thanks for sharing everything. I mean, it's short, but I think, you know, we got to really understand, like, you know, where this came from for you, like, you know, from a personal experience. And I think
Mhm.
that's so wonderful how you canalize sort of this, you know, this your own healing experience from drawing art and going in nature to create this for others, and just try and yeah, share what you love to do and help others with it. And I think that's the way to go. It's fascinating. And about, you know, forest bathing, and really helped me to understand a bit more about what it is, because you know, it's always just a bit of a mystery. You hear about this term and, you know, is it a trend? Is it what is it really? And I
Mhm.
think just even the tips you gave me, I'll definitely apply them. And I love the breathing, like that's such a nice way
Consistency.
of thinking. Yeah, I always just look, but I think the physical experience of touching and breathing is something I'll try as well.
Engaging the senses.
Yeah.
And the Japanese would say, especially breathing in those phytoncides that the trees produce. Uh,
Mm,
so that's the
beautiful.
prescription, is to get those phytoncides.
Yeah.
So
Well, great way to finish. Thanks so much, Brooke. I'll leave you
that's
to
it.
your
Yeah.
beautiful sunny afternoon.
Wow.
And
Too much,
yeah,
but
well, lucky you. I have fake lights, you know, and I think
yes,
you have it as
yeah,
well.
that used to be me. So
Yeah, maybe I'll get to where you are at some point.
yes,
Thanks so much. And yeah,
thank
we'll be in
you.
touch. Bye.